Kia ora and welcome to Beer Club. I'm Luke, this is Beer Jerk, and today we are drinking Red Bridge from Canyon. This is a beer from a Central Otago brewery. We chatted quite a bit about Canyon last week and their incredibly beautiful location and the interesting beers that they put out. So of course they're in Cardrona. They've got a pretty iconic brew pub that's overlooking the Shotover Canyon, where you can sit and enjoy a lovely beer and look at crazy things happening along the river. The jet boats whizzing along and all sorts of that crazy Queenstown type stuff going on. And they brew a lot of interesting beers, so interesting in various different ways. So they work with a lot of local producers that are raising hops and botanicals and fruit and yeast and things like that. The owners are a very old Otago farming family, so they're able to grow the barley that's malted to go in some of their beers, especially their I think it's their gold lager, their core range lager that's made with all local ingredients. And this one, the Red Bridge, is brewed with strawberries from Red Bridge Berries, which is a local farm. And there are some very cute photographs of Kit, the head brewer, harvesting strawberries or in the sort of pick your own strawberry gardens. And strawberry is a really delightful ingredient to go in various different beer styles, but especially farmhouse styles like this. But we need to reverse way back. We need to go way back to about a year ago when this beer was brewed, because this is a beer that's been in oak for about 8 months, which is pretty fancy and not a very common thing these days, and especially when it's done with a delicate hand and with nuance and with finesse, as is the case here. This is definitely not a woody, sort of barrel-aged, heavily oaked beer. It just works really perfectly with the style. It's definitely not over the top whatsoever. So yeah, it's these days it is quite an expensive way to make beer, just because space is expensive and barrels are expensive and time is expensive. But it was a way in which beers were often made in the olden days. So farmhouse ale was a kind of a catch-all name. So when people are learning about beer and the history of beer, they're often delighted that the first brewers were Brewsters, were women, and it's obvious, of course, the first brewers were women, because beer was not an industrialized product. Beer was made for the household, for the family. Beer was just simply part of sustenance, as core to the kitchen as baking bread or cooking stews. You would make your beer, and it was only really with the industrialization of brewing in the 1840s that we've talked a lot about that sort of age, where things just really leveled up with the giant breweries that took things to the next level in Bertrand-on-Trent, Pilsner Urquell, Guinness. That beer became a thing that wasn't made in kitchens and on small scales. It was made in factories and gigantic vats, and it became absolutely the domain of men as it changed what it was. But beers like this hark back to those earlier days. And of course, farmhouse brewing is just one step up from brewing for the household. Farms would brew their own beer to keep the workers hydrated and satisfied throughout the year. So farmhouse in France, you'd have like saisons. It's broadly that sort of category. So, I mean, I'm waffling on a bit because the category is totally undefined. A farmhouse ale is something that's brewed generally with a saison type yeast, or it could be grisette, or it could be sort of anything in that world. And the grains that you would use would, yes, primarily be barley, but also wheat. You use a lot of, or kind of whatever you've got really, you know, buckwheat, or all sorts of stuff can go into a farmhouse ale. It's more of a natural, relaxed sort of thing. It generally is conditioned for a longer amount of time. Beers that will be made seasonally with the seasons, saison. And of course, it fits with Canyon being, as I mentioned, a brewery that is owned by a farming family and working with very delicious local produce. So strawberries, you need to use a lot of strawberries to impart good flavour into your beer, which is the case here. So beer was brewed about a year ago. It was in French oak for I think about eight or 9 months. And then the delightful thing that when you work that way with beers, it's not so much guesswork or trial and error. It's simply you taste the thing and you work up the dosing rates and figure out how much of whatever adjuncts or extra ingredients are going to go in. So this is pretty heavily berried with this season's beautiful fresh berry crop, and also has a real good amount of sumac in, which just really counters and works nicely. If you are not sure what sumac is, it's a key ingredient in za'atar, that really delicious Middle Eastern spice blend that you may have had in like Persian cuisine, things like that. It's and the images here, it's this sort of like fluffy staghorn sort of thing. So it's called a drupe. That's what these flowers are called. And the staghorn sumac, it's not native to New Zealand. It's an introduced plant from North America, but it's a really, really cool looking plant. It's quite an ornamental plant. It's got these really lovely dark red leaves and these red drupes. And the flavour you get from sumac is kind of citrusy. It's got a tartness, a sourness, a fresh liveliness that works so well in za'atar with lime zest and cumin and those sort of ingredients. So yeah, really, really smart idea to use sumac alongside the strawberries here. And of course, in this beer, you're getting character from the yeast as well. So you're getting a sort of like phenol spice, like sort of black pepper character to it. So yeah, it's I think it's 4.2%, and there's a lot of flavour. There's a lot going on. It's a really delightful summertime beer. Hopefully it's sunny wherever you are drinking this, because it's definitely a beer that goes well with warm weather. And yeah, it's a fantastic farmhouse style. Sorry, I feel like I've just been waffling on about farmhouse, and I maybe haven't even really imparted what farmhouse beers are, other than they are old-fashioned beer styles that can kind of be anything. They're not hop forward, and it's not even around the yeast really, because of course it would have been just whatever yeast is floating around in the air and in the environment around your farm, whether that be in Flanders or Wallonia or all over France really, just that whole like sort of Western Europe region where these beers were being made. And you had similar beers like the Grisette is kind of indistinguishable from a Saison in many ways, and that's a style that's brewed for miners in France. So if you are a brewer yourself, farmhouse ales you could just have an entire brewery making farmhouse ales, and they will be very different every time. And a beauty of it is to incorporate delightful shit that you or your neighbours happen to be growing. So yeah, love beers like this. This is a very special beer, very limited edition, and really cool to be sharing it with you. This is what Beer Jerk is all about, trying new things. Great work to Kit and the whole brew team down there. Keep up the good work, and thank you for joining along for yet another beer of the week. Cheers.